Like, you understand how important it is. You know, I watch a lot of stuff on Deion Sanders, and he's so motivating on
A complete and total failure of leadership from the federal government.
If anyone asks how it's going in the black community, you tell them we're rising. Welcome back to the Brian Clay Chronicles. Again, I am your host, Brian Clay, and I have the innate pleasure of doing a dance again with our wonderful judge, Betty Moore Thomas. How you doing?
I am doing wonderfully, my brother. It's so good to be here with you.
You are looking wonderful. I like the black and white.
Thank you, sir.
The, what do they call it? Not Tattersall. Bear Bryant used to wear that. I can't think of the pattern.
Betty wearing it now.
But Betty's wearing it
yes.
now. Houndstooth. That's what it is.
That's right, houndstooth.
Sister Moore.
Yes, sir.
You've been on the bench doing great things.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about what you do and what you've been doing since the first time you were elected judge.
Well, first, let me tell you, I thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with you. You and I were together about 8 years ago. Just about every time, the first time I got started. And I have been serving now, can you believe it, almost 24 years.
Incredible.
24 years I've been serving in Division 5 of General Sessions Civil Court at the old courthouse, that pretty courthouse over there downtown, the pretty one, the pretty one. And so I've been serving every day, working, taking care of the citizens of Shelby County. And if you want me to tell you a little bit about the court, I want to do that for you.
Yes, let's talk about the court. We've had a plethora of things happen in Memphis. I was at a press conference today, Judge, where Pastor Arturo Williams-Eason,
yes,
their family spoke very eloquently about the tragic murder of the pastor.
yes.
More than just being a judge, you are an active citizen in Memphis. So let's talk about Betty the person, Betty the judge, and what you do in your court.
Well, you know, one thing about it for me, when I said serve, I do mean service, because even as a judge, you can't separate the person who lives in the community from being a judge. In other words, you're affected by everything that happens that surrounds you in your particular community and throughout the city. So in General Sessions Civil Court, as you know, we handle cases that are valued at $25,000 or less. We're not a small claims court.
No.
You and I have had conversations about the fact that people come to that court representing themselves a lot and don't really understand the process, don't really realize that when you come to that court, you have to know the laws, rules, and procedures, just like lawyers. But I would guess that probably 60 or 70% of the people that come through that court, they represent themselves. Folk know I got a case, whether it's one that they filed themselves or it's one that they're being brought to court on. And so they don't understand the process, they don't understand the laws, rules, and procedures. And so my job, my duty as a servant in that court is to try to ensure that within the guidelines of the law, the folks that come through have some tools available to them that will help them to at least understand the process. If they're not going to get an attorney, they can't hire a lawyer, but they're ending up or wanting to represent themselves. So I have created guidelines and information, a little booklet that I give to everybody who comes to court who's going to be representing themselves, that gives them some instruction, some education about the laws, rules, and procedures. Because we handle cases that include evictions, cases that are debt collection. We handle cases that are lawsuits, as I said, that are valued at $25,000 or less, any kind of lawsuit. I mean, I had a lawsuit that came through some years ago where a man was suing a friend of his because a friend had sold a sow that he was, if you will, babysitting for him. And I'm thinking, he's not talking about a pig, is he? He said, yes, Judge, I'm talking about a pig.
So you've seen everything.
Everything, sir, everything. And that's what we do. We see everything in that court. But we're not like Judge Joe Brown and Judge Judy, because it's more formal than that. Again, you have to know the laws, rules, and procedures, because the judge can't help you lead and guide you as far as your case is concerned.
Some of the greatest legal minds are here in Memphis right now at the National
Yes.
Bar Association.
Yes.
How do we engage those individuals, whoever they may be, on ideas on how to revolutionize or do creative things that attack the impoverished situation here in Memphis and Shelby County?
You have to be
From the bench.
Well, you have to be invested. One, you have to be invested in your city. You have to be invested in what you're doing as a judge. And, you know, people will say, well...
You can't be standoffish.
You can't because, like we were talking about earlier, even us judges, we're affected by what happens in our community. For me, the question is, as I serve, what can I do when the people come into that courtroom to help them within the guidelines of the law? And there's always room, with the Court of General Sessions being a court of equity, to make space for helping the citizens that come through. For instance, evictions. I have been an integral part of the Home901.org program. I know you're familiar with that.
Very
because
familiar.
we got tons of money, if you will, during COVID, where people were looking at being evicted. So the question is, how do you make that plan work so that people aren't put out on the street? And how do you make that plan work so that landlords are also recipients of some of the money? So being a part of that program as a judge helps me and others to understand what we can do within the guidelines of the law, what do we need to do, and how can we disperse the money that we're being given, use it or lose it, so that we're protecting and taking care of our citizens. So I invested in that program. We judges invest in that program so that we can make sure that we're dispensing it properly. We make sure that we're dispensing it to as many citizens, as many people as possible, so that we can save folk from being on the streets. So when you're investing and then you go to conferences like the NBA and you talk to other judges, other lawyers who have the same situation in their communities, then you're networking. You're finding out what works for you all. Let me tell you what works for us. Is there anything else that you all are doing that we need to do to make it even better? So that's the one thing that is so great about the networking, the conferences that come. You're able to find out, is there anything that we can do for the betterment of our community, because you're invested in it.
Look into that camera and tell Memphis and Shelby County why we should elect Betty back to the bench.
Elect Betty back to the bench because not only do I know what I'm doing, and after 24 years, you have a relationship with a lot of the lawyers that come through. And what I mean by that is when you're a court of equity, that means that when someone comes in and has to have just a little bit extra within the guidelines of the law, for instance, when I have seniors that come in, Brian, sometimes they have co-signed for someone, they don't have any money, they have limited resources. But when you have an investment and when you have a relationship, and I as a judge can say, well, Mr. Senior, Miss Senior, let me see if we can take information from you, give it to the attorney, and attorney, can you take this information as far as this person's income, talk to your client and see if this is something that something else can be done with it. And 9 times out of 10, Brian, what generally happens is when that case comes back to me, the creditor has looked at the information that we've suggested be looked at and is willing to dismiss that case. So you need to have a judge who's on the bench who doesn't mind going the extra mile, who doesn't mind setting cases at 8 o'clock in the morning when docket is usually 10 or 1:30. I do that. I go the extra mile because I'm vested in what I do. I serve. I've got the knowledge. I've got the experience. I've got the wisdom. And that's what we need in this community. I've got the compassion. I got the respect. I got what is needed for General Sessions Court Division 5. Return me. You won't regret it.
You got what it takes.
I've got what it takes,
Will
sir.
you come back to the Brian Clay Chronicles?
I will come back anytime you want. I'm more than eager to do that, to continue to educate our community about what you can do, what we need to do for our courts.
And continue the conversation, right?
Yes, sir.
Betty, it's been a pleasure like always.
Always good to see you, my brother.
Next,
Thank
we
you.
have Brother Rodney Coleman interviewing one of my favorite Omegas, Attorney Ross Sampson. We'll be right back right after this. Bye-bye.